Hi, Nonverbal Comm students. It's Ivy again. I am finishing up Chapter 7 with you, and this is chapter on face and eyes. And so the first part we looked at was the face part of the chapter, and now we're turning to eye behavior. And one thing I thought of was that when I'm in those Zoom or WebEx meetings, it's very hard for me to look at the green light that I have to look at when I'm recording because I'm drawn to faces. And so I end up looking at the people all over my screen because I feel like I'm making eye contact with them, but then it makes my eyes sort of go downward because I'm looking this way and not at the green light. And so when I'm doing these recordings, I'm always adjusting the position and trying to get the right height and everything so that it looks like I'm making eye contact with you. But I tell you, it's awkward. It's just kind of a weird thing. But anyway, I'm trying to get over it. I'm trying to get better at it, but I also tend to sort of look at my face when I'm doing these recordings, so it's bizarre. Anyway, moving on. Eye contact, eye behavior, right? So we're in about page 236, 237. The purposes of eye behavior. The study of eyes is called oculesics, which is just a fancy word like proxemics and haptics and kinesics and all that stuff, paralanguage, vocalics. Oculesics is the sort of fancy term for studying eye behavior, and there's a ton of research out there on eye behavior. Eyes are the windows to the soul is what Shakespeare said. We value eye gaze, eye contact a lot in American culture. We don't trust people if they won't meet our eye. We don't trust people who make too much eye contact. There's sort of this middle window, right, that we're supposed to fall into. And so we've got this kind of modicum of eye contact that we consider appropriate. Some people, everybody's different, you know, and some folks are really shy, and so they look down. They don't like making eye contact with people. They feel maybe scrutinized. But we do tend to have negative thoughts about somebody, that they lack confidence, or maybe they're lying to us, or maybe they're just shifty, or they're just not paying attention if we can't make contact with the eyes. That's still important. I would say eye behavior is even more important during this COVID pandemic that we're all living through, that many of us are living through. I need to be more careful. I apologize. I know some of you have lost people, and so I'll be more careful. I apologize. But in this time of the pandemic, when we can't see much of people's faces, eyes, I think, are taking on even more importance because it is part of people's faces that is not masked and that we can see. And just think about that. So, purposes of eye behavior. One of the first purposes of eye behavior is just to recognize people. I thought the other day, I was like, I hope I recognize my students later on, the ones I have right now that I can't see. I don't know what my students fully look like. A few of you have come to my WebEx office hours, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's your whole face. But it's just very odd to not really know what my students look like because I see about this much of you in the face anyway. So, recognizing others is just a basic thing. If you walk into a room or you go to a conference or a meeting or something, in more normal times anyway, where you could see people face to face and see all of their faces and not wearing masks, using the face and the eyes, we just scan the room like, do I know anybody here? There's all kinds of things that are happening. This is on page 236 through about 239, 10 different functions or purposes of eye behavior. It's very interesting, too, to watch people and their eye behavior when they're thinking. When you have a cognitive load, a cognitive task, maybe you're trying to remember something. You're trying to go back in your mind and recall some details. Or when you took tests that were open book and not open book and open notes, that you had to recall all that information. We typically don't make eye contact with people when we're trying to recall something, or when we have sort of a high cognitive load. When we're thinking a lot, our eyes tend to go up and over to the right or to the left. Some folks, their eyes go down and to the right or to the left, and that's just an odd thing that happens, but it is very hard to look in the eye area of another person when we're trying to really think and concentrate on something. Eye gaze is the general term, G-A-Z-E. Eye gaze is the general term for just general looking behavior. Mutual eye gaze is when you look in the eye area of another person and you have that locked on eye contact. Eye contact is the more common word for it, but eye gaze and mutual gaze are the terms that research tends to use. Okay, so there are forms of eye behavior. Take a look at that, page 241. There's a whole bunch of different things about eye contact, eye gaze, the one-sided look, a gaze omission, gaze aversion. Those are two different things. Gaze aversion means you were looking and then you looked away. You averted your eyes. Gaze omission occurs when it's just an avoidance of eye contact. Sometimes that's intentional, sometimes it's unintentional. We tend to think of gaze omission as being an unintentional avoidance of eye contact. Some people just are uncomfortable making eye contact and they won't do it. There are some cultures where low eye contact is considered polite and is expected, that people do not look in the eye. Some people think Americans are rude because we expect eye contact as a source of respect and connection with other people. Not all cultures are the same about this, and you know that. But be aware of that when you travel to other places. You may think a culture very unfriendly because people don't make much eye contact on the street or on the sidewalk. And that's just a difference, possibly, with American culture and other cultures. Okay, so we're taking a look at that. We're moving on to pupil dilation. Pupil dilation is around page 242 is pupil dilation. Pupil dilation, you really can't force that to happen. That's not an intentional behavior, unless you walk outside and take in a whole bunch of sunlight because you want your pupils to dilate. Or if you're smoking something, your pupils are going to dilate if you're smoking a little something. That's a weird thing to put on a teaching video, isn't it? But it's honest. So there you go. You expect that from me. Pupils dilate, widen, when we are presented with a positive stimulus. Okay, for me, that might be a big old piece of chocolate cake. My eyes and my pupils are going to widen to take in more of that positive stimulus. Probably if you are physically or sexually or both attracted to someone, your pupils will dilate when you see that person. Several decades ago, advertisers tried to take advantage of this, and so they put print ads in magazines and newspapers, and the models all had these widely dilated pupils because they thought that would draw people into those advertisements and make us want to read them more. No, didn't happen, but that was one misuse, maybe, of the research, the scientific research about pupil dilation. So you can't force it to make people more persuaded or, to sell them something or whatever. It doesn't work that way. But it is interesting that the pupils widen, they dilate, and then they constrict depending on what the stimulus is, and certainly depending on the lighting. Modifying the eyes is one of the last sections of this chapter. The fastest growing surgery in Asian cultures, and as well for Asian Americans, is an eyelid surgery. It's called, this is a tough one to pronounce, upper blepharoplasty. Upper blepharoplasty. It's just, one of those fancy terms. But it is a procedure designed to create more lid for the eye rather than the eyes being more set in, because that gives a more Western look, and some people in Asian cultures or even Asian Americans wish to have more of an eyelid showing. They feel like that's either more attractive or it makes them fit in somehow. There's other reasons to have this surgery. Some people's sight is impaired as they age because their eyelids start to droop. And I met a woman one time who had this. She'd had both eyelids done because her eyelids started to droop so much that it impeded her vision, and she had to have them pulled back in. That's a scary thing for me, but any kind of cosmetic surgery or a procedure like that is a little bit scary, particularly things on the eyes. But anyway, take a look at that. There's different things, eye lift, eye cosmetic, eye creams. There's all kinds of new things with attaching eyelashes if you don't have enough of those in a more permanent kind of way rather than putting on false eyelashes. Eyeglasses, LASIK surgery is still quite popular. Colored contacts were popular a while back. I always thought those looked so strange, but anyway, that's just my opinion. Like particularly if you have brown eyes and then you try to turn them to blue, they always seemed a little alien to me, but sorry if I've offended you, but I don't think those are quite as popular now. I think they were kind of a fad. And then piercings and things around the eyes, particularly through the eyebrows. We do talk about that. There is a final section here starting on 246 on eyes and deception. We will get a more thorough coverage of deception as the very last thing we study in the course. There's a 3-page handout in your guidebooks, your packets on deception. Just realize that the information is changing regarding eye contact or eye gaze and deception. It used to be that the thinking was, well, the best liars, they can't look you in the eye. If somebody can't look you in the eye, they're lying to you. Well, the best liars, when they hear information like that, they change what they do. And so now the thought is the best liars in the world will look you in the eye. They'll make possibly more eye contact than normal. Sometimes they're overcompensating for the fact that they're lying to your face. But eye contact is not a reliable indicator of deception. Neither is rapid eye blinking. We used to think that somebody was being deceptive. They did a lot of rapid eye blinking because there was an energy in the body, and that activation in the body went to their eyes, and so they blinked their eyes a whole lot. Well, not really. There's some research that says you don't blink as much when you're trying to be deceptive because you're trying to control the nonverbal energy. So think about that. It's a little bit contradictory what's going on with deception and eye behavior. With that, I'm going to close out Chapter 7 and move on. And I hope you've enjoyed the discussion of face and eyes as massive channels of nonverbal information. Take care, everybody.